Well, good morning. Yeah, I'm Cece. I'm the Executive Director of SPIN, the Special Parents Information Network, and we serve families who have kids with disabilities in Santa Cruz and San Benito County. Our mission, which will be up here in a moment, at the beginning of every one of our board meetings, we say out loud together to get us centered this mission. So I would like you to indulge me and please say this along with me. Our mission, SPIN's mission, is to help children with special needs achieve their full potential by empowering their families and the professionals who serve them through information, support, and resources. So, and the next slide will tell a bit about SPIN's history and that we're a grassroots movement. And so in the early days, it was a bunch of moms who had kids with disabilities that were looking for resources, and they had to drive over the hill to Parents Helping Parents, which was the agency that we modeled ourselves after. And they just didn't want to drive that hill to have workshops, to have support groups, to have a mentor parent program, to have all the many different things, and also have a connection with school districts that they needed. So they started gathering together for like 10 years and talking in small groups. And also, you know, there's a piece of the puzzle that I always dream of talking about that I don't get to talk about in other venues, is the spiritual component of how these people came together and how I came to this calling. And these women really went through a spiritual experience in that when they had a baby born with a different disability, they said, you know, F you to you know who, whatever God that they believed in, whatever religion that they were torn. And they were like, I can't believe this is happening to me. How could you do this to me? And they had to come to a point where they literally have a spiritual experience and go, okay, I'm now going to, you know, take a deep breath and figure out what the next best thing to do is, and know that God is good. And know that the power greater than themselves that they believe in did not take them down this road to drop them or to give them some terrible thing. They came to a different belief system that they would be cared for, and that this was a gift and these were their little angels, or whatever their language. Each person had their different language of what they felt. But they knew that they needed to talk with each other, because somewhere, and I'm sure Christopher or some of you can help me with that quote, where two or more gathered in my name, is what Jesus said. And then he also talked about the least of these. And that those two quotes were something that many of the people involved, and all the people, I shouldn't say all, many of the people involved now still certainly believe in that we're doing God's work, and we are here to be of service, and that is what a calling is all about, is being of service to the community that we're called to. Like, you are all called here, and I certainly was called to pick up the phone and make a call to Christopher when I read his article in the Good Times about the donations he was giving to all the different communities. I'm like, all you're missing is us. So I called him. Yeah, that's it. You had everything. You have all the other communities that I support and believe in, but you didn't have families and kids with disabilities or people with disabilities. I'm like, this is it, you know. So, you know, whatever, you know, the spirit of Mother Teresa says, Cece, you better call that guy. So, anyway, so that's a little bit about, just sort of a little bit about the history. You can read it there. We have volunteers. The umbrella that we finally got incorporated in 2000, which is when we got the nonprofit status. And so that's been a little while now, but that was also another, miracle. One of the women who was one of the founders, Mary Balzer, her husband had started Dientes, which is a nonprofit organization that serves low-income families with dentistry, which is really important for kids in school to have their teeth worked on, as we all know. I have 2 implants to prove it. That he had known how to start a nonprofit, and they happened to be gifted with a child with a disability, that they were able to use his knowledge and expertise in order to get the nonprofit going. Because as you can see by the time frame, it takes a while. So anyway, so the next slide is about the services we provide. Okay, so let me see if I got my collaborative models right here. Well, I'll just wait. Yeah, so it's right up there. You can read it. I don't have to go over it, but you guys can also ask me any questions if you have. You know, we provide information on the different disabilities. We have different parents call us all the time. Like I said, we serve Santa Cruz and San Benito, and a little bit about how I came to this calling. I was somebody who worked in the schools in special ed for a long time. My daughter was diagnosed with learning disabilities starting in 2nd grade. By 7th grade, she tested out. She could figure it out. And I like to say the olden days, but she's 38 years old now. So in the olden days, there were teachers, and I'm sure there's many retired teachers around here that were very dedicated public servants, but in the olden days, there was a lot of teachers who, I think they slept at the school. It was their calling to be teachers. And my daughter had this one teacher that would meet her every morning before school to give her the extra help that she needed. And that is the ultimate, it's like the best way to learn is one-on-one. So she was able, because of that dedication of one single person, like it just takes one person in someone's life to make a difference, right? And so that's why I got involved in special ed, and the other sort of backstory about that is my dad was a custodian for Mission Hill Junior High for 30 years, and so part of being the oldest child, I have 2 sisters, and my niece is here today, my middle sister's daughter's here, and so I went to work for the schools, and then I started to sort of think a little bit more strategically, or a light bulb went off, or God tapped me on the shoulder, angels, whatever, we don't really know. But I wanted to do more. So I was a student, my daughter was a student, I worked in the schools. I held every job from food service person. It was one of those things where, I woke up a single mom. Well, oops, I guess I'm gonna have to figure that one out. And when she went into kindergarten, I started working in the school. So I worked in special ed for many years. But anyway, I then thought, what can I do to be a better service? And I ended up quitting working for the schools, worked for public access television, and I had that friend of mine that worked there said, if you want to run for school board, I'll run your campaign. So I ran for school board in 2002 and won and served, and it was a great, fabulous, ugly, disgusting experience. I pretty much, my mantra was the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I went in there saying that every day. And from that experience, I then felt like I can now make an educated decision about how to be of service and how to help. And what I saw on the school board was everybody blaming special education for the encroachment on the general fund. And I'm like, you're blaming the least of these for your monetary problems and all your problems, and everybody wants to point the fingers at the feds and the state, and we can blame them all we want for everything. But I'm like, oh, hell no, not on my watch. I'm going to do something about this. And I just felt like I could, well, that's sort of, it's having like, what can I do? And it really dawned on me that if I could just serve the families with the kids with special needs, then that would be a better way to serve than being on the school board. And because, God is always hooking me up, because I need a lot of miracles and I ask for them, and I'm like, hey, I'll be your servant. You just, help me out here. My job at community television got eliminated. I then go to Hawaii and get a surfing accident, and in between time, this friend of mine said, hey, there's this job that's got your name on it. And I applied, which was this executive director of spin. I applied for this job, and when I came back from the surfing accident, they called me, And I said, I guess it's not supposed to be because I'm injured, I can't come in. And 5 minutes later, maybe I should say 3. Do we say don't give up 3 minutes before the miracle? Somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes, or 6, 7 minutes, I get this phone call from my friend Ed. He goes, hey Cece, this is Eddie. What are you doing? I go, nothing, how are you doing? You know, and he's like, that was my wife that you were just talking to on the phone. This job has your name on it. And I go, for you, I know you, I trust you. I'm like, but you gotta give me some reasonable accommodation because I can't come in for an interview until my back is better. He's like, no problem, no problem. When do you want to come in? Come on. I'm like, okay. And so I went in and interviewed, and the rest is history. And so it's like, sometimes, you know, I get an idea and I'm not sure if it's God's will, right? Because sometimes I get into my self-will. And then, but when it knocks on my door over and over and I surrender, you know, I thought, oh, well, not supposed to be, you know, and it all worked out. So I consider that a miracle. I consider this my service to God and to the community and to everybody. And I'm really blessed and gifted that I get to do this work. And I'm really happy that you guys are listening to me about it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what we do. And also just like every person that works with me, we're a little tiny, small nonprofit, you know. There's only 7 of us, and we are all called to this work. And most of the people that work with us have kids with disabilities. And there's a picture here, you know, pictures speak louder than words, they say. So that's a picture of a mom and a baby. That was a woman that adopted that baby. And that baby has special needs. And that baby's now like a bigger kid. So, you know, there's, you know, part of that is the mentor-parent program. So like when this baby was little, this mom would talk to another mom that had a kid with the same disability. And that's where the 2 or more gathered for the same common purpose. And the burden is lifted when that happens. And, you know, we have another program that is just part of some of the other things that we do, where we'll go to the hospitals. So we have so the Watsonville Hospital has been really great. And they, for a while, you know, it was really about the relationships of people that you know. So if you guys know any pediatric nurses or know anybody that works in hospitals that are right there, those baby nurses, those are the people we need to talk to, because they're the ones that can call us when a baby's born with a disability, and that's what we need. So at Watsonville Hospital, there was 8 babies born in 1 year with Down syndrome. They were all to Latino, Spanish-only speaking families. And they called us, and we sent a parent with a kid with the same disability that spoke their language and a staff person. And it's a miracle, literally every time. Because you can watch this person, the burden lifted off of them, literally feel it and see it when they are with somebody that's been in that boat and that's gone through that and is coming out the other side and says, I'm here for you. I'm with you. And that group of people, those 8 people, they are raising their kids together. They're our most supportive group. They come to all the support group meetings. They have Halloween parties for their kids, and they do a bunch of different stuff. You know, so that's just a little bit about that. And, you know, and some of that comes from this mentor-parent program. So here's how about the mentors, you know, the logistics about the mentors and what kinds of disabilities that we serve and that we do. I think the next slide is about the educational workshops. And yeah, so the educational workshops, a bunch of different topics. I've got a whole bunch of information over here. Please take a newsletter. There's our latest workshop that we're doing is on conservatorship. There's brochures and you know, other information about the different staff people we have and the locations that we have. And then the next slide is hopefully more about the services that we provide. And, you know, so like our all disability support group, actually my other niece runs that one. And, you know, people used to say, how do you guys get new teachers? And I'd say, well, we grow them in my family. You know, my niece who's here today is a special education teacher. I know Bob, is it Bob? Bob that I met today, he's a retired teacher. So there's our different support groups and our other community support groups that we're associated with. And then the next slide should be about what we offer. So we have a resource library, you know, and what I'm going to do in, you know, soon is I'm going to buy Christopher's book and I'm going to put it in our resource library. So there you go. Because we're always trying to, you know, like the song earlier was sort of about fighting the system, because, you know, nonprofits are supposed to be separate from religious institutions, but, you know, always trying to push that envelope. And I haven't read Christopher's book yet, but I want to hear the story. But I just met him and knew he was my brother. So we have a resource library, and then just sort of about our model. The next slide is about our model, how we are, who we interface with, all the different people that we interface with. You know, this is just sort of all boring stuff that we want to go through. But you can go to the next slide. You know, and the next slide is, it even gets more boring as we go along. So just about, you know, who we serve, and we have to collect all this data because of the grants. And so we are a Family Empowerment Center on Disabilities, and that grant provides the money for us to serve the families from 3 to 22. And then we just recently became a Family Resource Center and got the Family Resource Center grant, really through a miracle and through no work of my own, but just that the County Office of Ed had it and they weren't doing it. And so I'm like, well, we're happy to help. And we'll do it, and we're happy to do it. And so now we get to serve the 0 to 3 population, and that's really exciting. We have a new staff person to do that. And again, sort of the pie chart about, you know, you can go to the next slide, another pie chart. And I don't know if you guys have any questions. You can go to the next pie chart, and hopefully we're done with these. And this is our regular PowerPoint presentation that we usually give. So hopefully the next one will be about our collaborative partners. And yeah, and so that's, I think that's our last one, but I'd like to hear if you guys have any questions, or if there's something that I didn't cover, or you know, anything else, any comments that you might have, you know, or whatever. Tell me what you think.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I know, my question, because I know Bob shared with you that we have a special needs granddaughter. She was the first granddaughter, and I wondered about the schools here, because we started getting help when Kendra was 2. People from the school came, and then she was in all the special ed. She had fabulous teachers, just, you know, incredible support. And so are the schools, Santa Cruz schools, are they doing? I mean, you're doing this.
Well, we're doing this. Well, here's, yeah. Well, I mean, I think everybody's trying to do the best they can with what they have, right? You know, and that's you know, I like to think the glass is half full, but you know, it was, and you will remember this, it was the Ford administration that deemed that you needed to educate special needs people, kids, and then they only funded that 40%. So if you compound 40% of the funding, it was supposed to be funded 100%, and the mandate to do that from Ford administration till now, you know, and don't get me started on Betsy DeVos. I mean, she's got to go. She's got to go. She's got to go. You know, so we just did that.
Well, I guess like I'm saying, thank you for people like you, because it makes all the difference for the families and the kids.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're welcome. Well, thank you. Thanks for being here. You know.
And we're definitely going to designate fundings, half the proceeds from church to this, but what are other ways that we can, for this month, but what are other ways that, like we as a congregation, are there volunteer opportunities that are coming up that you need help with? Or?
Well, that's a good question. I definitely take one of those purple sheets that have all the phone numbers on it, and take my business card and make sure to get on our email list and our snail mail list. And we usually need help with the workshops. So we need people, we need like lots of grunt work, right? And a lot of times we'll need like folding or stuffing envelopes, Sometimes there'll be the other events that we have that we need help with. It just depends on, your expertise or, so we have a couple grandparents here with kid with disabilities. They might want to talk to somebody else who has a kid with disabilities, because more and more we have grandparents. We had an event out of Lad Nursery and we met grandparents who are raising grandkids. So that's also a thing happening, and the grandparent experience is a different experience, and the raising your grandkids is a different experience. But we definitely need people that are open-hearted and willing to talk to other families in need. That's a really cool thing. And then but what really works, is the commonality, like the two or more gathered, when you say, I have a grandkid with disability, that's, when the magic happens. So we will, everybody else want to help me stuff envelopes. I mean, me and the staff, we stuff all our envelopes, and I go to the post, I'm the executive director, but I go to the post office, I get the mail, I pay the bills, I meet with the bookkeeper, we're all very grassroots, there's no big fancy, there's no departments, and there's no big overhead, and that's why, and it's almost like it's really cool to be small, because that way I'm just going to go buy a book and put it in the library and nobody can tell me I can't. Right. So, and because, like I said, that we're all doing this from a calling, that we believe that, it will all work itself out, and as long as we have our service hats on, the next right thing will happen. So, let me see, what else? Anything else? Well, I appreciate you guys being here. Hopefully, this is right about time for communion. Turn it over to Christopher.
For me, programs like this are amazing. I actually discovered, it was a year and a half ago, Miss Benny, I found out that I was on the spectrum, kind of, and I told my mother, and she was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They didn't have a name for it back then, but I've got family that have special needs, and it's such an amazing work that you're doing. It's so needed. The funding is just not there in the education system, and it needs to be. And one of the reasons we talk about tearing the system down, one of the reasons we talk about this, is not only because it's unjust, not only because it's not wise stewardship of resources, but also because people that are committing these atrocities and not funding programs that we really need in communities, they're doing it under the guise of Christianity. And for me as a Christian pastor, that's a problem. That's a really big problem. And Jim Wallace, who's one of the founders of Red Letter Christians this week, made a national call. And I'm going to make it from the pulpit this week. He just straight up said, you cannot be a Christian and support Donald Trump. You can't. You really cannot. And I 100% agree with that. You cannot inflict that kind of pain, that kind of suffering. You cannot cut funding for programs that are needed, but also fund, all of these atrocious things that we're doing with our foreign policy. You cannot do that and claim to follow the ethical teachings of Christ. It's impossible. And I want to affirm that, and I want to challenge you to make that known. This doesn't just need to come from the pulpit here. This needs to come from out there, because not only is Donald Trump a problem, Betsy DeVos is definitely a problem. But until justice comes, we do what we can. We do the best we can, like you said. So, one more time, I would like to thank you for the work that you're doing, because it's so important. And until next week, may the peace of the Lord Christ go with you, wherever it may send you. May it guide you through the wilderness and protect you through the storms. May it bring you home rejoicing at the wonders that it shows you. And may it bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors. Grace and peace to you.